It's 22 hours GMT here in Accra, midnight in Brussels, Belgium, and 1 a.m. in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. It's also 5 a.m. in Bangkok, Thailand. From the News Hub, this is News at 10 on TV3 on 3FM 92.7. I'm Stephen NT. Let's first take a look at the major news highlights of the day. The Ochihini Osajifo Amwetio Foripeyin II has given a vivid account of the sequence of events before the death of the former Vice President Parkwesi Emisa Arthur at the 37 Military Hospital in Accra last Friday. The revered chief said the former Vice President was transported to the hospital at the back of a pickup truck after an ambulance failed to arrive quickly. On the retired state prosecutor Ellen Kwaukume, who is in the Asin Central MP Kennedy Japon's, who watches the Watchman video, has denied receiving a bribe of $5,000 to botch the case. The Republic versus Mohammed Hafiz Abdallah and Mubarak Saidu and Prince Kidston Kwame. According to Madame Kwaukume, she diligently worked on the case until her retirement when she handed it over. She said she decided to meet with us when the complainants in the case failed to turn up to testify in court on each of the 3 dates set for hearing. And President Akufo-Addo says the appointment of Martin Amido as Ghana's first special prosecutor will deny persons who will be investigated and prosecuted for acts of corruption the often cited refrain of witch hunting. The president was speaking during the plenary session of the 31st African Union Summit in Mauritania. And the Minister of Lands and Natural Resources, John Peter Amewu, says Ghana's sustainable development will demand a reverse of environmental degradation through illegal mining, illegal logging, wildfires and intense sand winning. He observed the importance of massive tree planting to help promote and develop the ecosystem. And the world's most advanced humanoid robot, Sophia, finally met Ethiopia's Prime Minister after the bag containing some of her body parts was found. The bag containing some of the robots was lost at Frankfurt Airport last week, which led to the cancellation of a press conference scheduled to take place on Friday at the Ethiopian National Museum in the capital, Addis Ababa. Designed by Hong Kong firm Hanson Robotics, Sophia has been programmed to speak Amharic, Ethiopia's official language. She also speaks English. Those are our major news highlights. Remember, you can hear us live on 3FM 92.7 and we're streaming on our Facebook page and on 3news.com. Up next is a big one. Welcome back. Now, President Akufo-Addo says the appointment of Martin Amido as Ghana's first special prosecutor will deny persons who will be investigated and prosecuted for acts of corruption the often cited refrain of witch hunting. The president was speaking during the plenary session of the 31st African Union Summit ongoing in Mauritania.
We have a particular problem in Ghana. That is that every time a prosecution is mounted against a high-ranking official, you hear the cry, witch hunting. And it has become a way of protection for senior political figures. We've established an office of special prosecutor that is a permanent official who is independent of the executive, who has the remit to hold all officials, past and present, accountable for their stewardship. And the person who's the first occupant of that office is a leading figure of the opposition. Oh, fine save. Was a former attorney general in the government of President Atta Mills. And this is a person who has an extremely high reputation for his stance on corruption and is a figure of integrity. And we're taking it that If he then puts you in his gaze for an act of wrongdoing, that charge of witch hunting will no longer be available. And we believe that that is a very important step that we're having to take to make sure that the principle of equality before the law in Ghana is truly made meaningful.
On heads of state of the at the 31st African Union Summit have committed themselves to chart a new path aimed at permanently eradicating corruption on the African continent. Corruption is one of the most formidable challenges to good governance, development and poverty reduction in Africa, as has been captured in the 2008 Transparency International report. According to the African Union, around 148 billion US dollars are stolen from the continent by its leaders and civil servants every year. The recent Forbes list of most corrupt nations had 9 out of the first 16 countries coming from Africa. Let's quickly get onto the telephone lines. Adam Senanu is co-chair of the Citizens Movement Against Corruption. He joins us now. Good evening, sir. Thank you very much. Now, with what has been happening across the African continent, do you foresee, what has been happening in terms of corruption, do you foresee Africa permanently managing to eradicate corruption? Hello, sir. Right, we do have Adam Senanu on the telephone lines. We're finding difficulty establishing contact with him. Let's try and see if he's back on the line. Mr. Senanu, good evening and thank you extremely. We're grateful for your time. Right, so we'll be going to Adam Senanu pretty shortly, but I did tell you that heads of state at the 31st African Union Summit have committed themselves to chart a new path aimed at permanently eradicating corruption on the African continent. Corruption, as it is one of the most formidable challenges against good governance, development and poverty reduction on the continent, and it's captured in the 2018 Transparency International report. We do have Adam Senanu is joining us on the telephone lines now. Good evening, sir, and thank you extremely. I was saying that from the way corruption is going on the African continent and the responses we've had from African leaders in terms of policy direction and all of that, do you foresee that Africa can permanently eradicate corruption at some point?
Well, good evening, and I think it depends on how serious we are about the commitments that have been expressed after this meeting they had. Indeed, we need ethical leadership at all levels of government in all our African states, and we cannot achieve this without, as it were, integrating this into the educational curricula without families beginning to look at corruption as something that is a reflection of what is happening in our society and our moral fiber. So it's a level of commitment of not just those who are speaking as presidents of states, but also of the communities at large and community leaders, including religious ones, across the length and breadth of Africa.
So what you're suggesting is that it goes beyond rhetoric and talk for,
Absolutely.
It goes beyond leaders converging at the AU summit and agreeing to chart a path. What needs to be done is concrete commitment in terms of educating the citizens more for them to get better understanding of how to deal with corruption. But we're also hearing that around $148 billion is stolen from the continent by its leaders and civil servants every year. These sums of money are usually taken to Western countries. Would you say that the West can take themselves out of this equation of corruption scourge on the African continent?
No, absolutely not. The receiver is as guilty as the giver. And so if their systems are not set up such that it identifies and is able to repatriate back to African countries resources that have been stolen from the coffers of governments and from the citizens of Africa, they are as much guilty as those of our number who are, as it were, perpetrating this wickedness against their own brothers and sisters.
I know one of the things you just mentioned is the fact that African leaders need to institute programs for corruption, anti-corruption measures to be inculcated into education curriculum and all of that. But if we look at civil society groups like yourself across Africa, what more can outfits like yours do, as well as citizens actually, to hold leaders to account?
I think that it is becoming increasingly clear that taking concrete actions such as being willing to go to court to demand accountability and to demand sanctions, punitive ones against those who have perpetrated crimes against the society at large in terms of the resources they're stealing is very key. So it's not enough to, again, on our side, have the rhetoric, but be willing to take the actions and bear the cost that get people before the courts, that allow systems to sanction them and set the right precedents that are very much needed to make this a very high-risk venture for others who think they can continue this type of impunity.
Right, Mr. Senano, we're grateful for your time. Thank you very much. Adam Senano is co-chairman of the Citizens Ghana Movement. I'm Stephen Nt. You're listening and watching News at 10 live from the News Hub at Adisawe Kanda in Accra. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Now, the Ochehini Osagyefo Amoitiao for Opinion II is giving a vivid account of the sequence of events before the death of the former Vice President Pakwesi Emisarta at the 37 Military Hospital in Accra last Friday. The revered chief said the former Vice President was transported to the hospital in the back of a pickup truck after an ambulance failed to arrive quickly.
Every time I go there, I met my friend, Amisata, and we talk, we shake hands. He was doing his, and I was doing mine. He gets on for 25 minutes, and I'm on for maybe 25 or 30. He finishes first, and he proceeds to the cross-train the machine as he does. For 14 years, I've known him in the gym. I had finished my Stairmaster. I'm on the stationary bike, sweating profusely, and I heard bang.
Having heard a bang and some women screaming, he quickly left his machine and rushed to where he heard the sound and found some trainers gathered around the late vice president, who was trying to catch his breath as the people around him tried to resuscitate him. The Ochehini recounted calling for an ambulance, and since there was none at the gym, the former vice president had to be transported in a pickup to the hospital.
And something dawned on me. When we took him out, there was no ambulance, there was no car. We threw the former vice president in the pickup, threw him in the back, and they drove off to 37. At this moment, I went back to the gym, and everybody had departed. The place was empty. I just went and got my tablet and my phone, called my driver to take me home.
Very sad narrative there. My colleague Abu Isa Moni spoke on News 360 earlier tonight with the Executive Director for Public Safety, Nanea Akwada. He began by asking him how inadequate ambulances poses threat to public safety.
The distance between 37 Military Hospital and where the former Vice President Pakwesi Emisarta collapsed, how long should it take an ambulance to reach there to carry him to safety to get health care?
I think you've asked a very critical question, and that question actually, if you delve deep and you attempt to get a response to it, you would split open, the horrendous body of Ghana's health system, how it is like. While elsewhere, constantly, the emergency care services are reviewing and evaluating their services in relation to time. It's not the same in Ghana. As I speak in Ghana, we've not had any such evaluations done, and so we cannot even tell you what it is like in urban areas and what it is like in rural areas. That said, we also as a country do not have dedicated source of funds to take care of our ambulance services, and hence the poor picture that we have. We have had to discuss all of these, and the figures are not anything that are secret anymore. We all know that as we sit right now, just 55 ambulances are in service. We must have one dedicated number. We must have an effective dispatch center where all calls are routed to, and then they in turn, dispatch other relevant emergency bodies. If all of these things are not available for us, we can't say that we have come of age. For any nation to pride itself as a developed or a seriously developing country, as we want to be taken into, we must make sure that we put our emergency healthcare system, in place and put it up.
And away from that, the chips compound at Obonche in the central region is constantly deserted and obviously not serving its purpose. Residents of the town and other nearby communities say they rather have to visit the homes of the health workers to access health care. Here's a report by Ajwa Adubia Osu.
The CHIPS compound concept was introduced by the Ghana Health Service in 2000 to promote primary health care, reduce maternal mortality, and improve overall health coverage. At Obontere, where CHIPS compound serves more than 3 communities, residents say health workers are always absent. Mary Edriam says she has to trek on several locations only to meet a deserted facility most of the time. I decided to follow up. This is the Obontere CHIPS compound that serves about 3 communities. That is Onyadze, Ango, and the Obontere community itself. As at 10:15 that I got here, there was no health worker around, just as the people of Onyadze had complained about. After meeting a closed CHIPS compound, I was directed to a female laborer at the health center who had been granted permission to stay away from work but had been tasked to attend to anyone who visits the facility. She told the news team the health workers had traveled to the district office to submit forms for validation. I met 2 of the workers at the Ejumako District Health Directorate and sought to find out reasons for their usual absence.
If I'm on duty for the weekend, even after 3 after work, if somebody should come and call me, I know I'm on weekend duty, so I'm the one supposed to go to the facility. Because we are not staying at the facility, when it's 3 o'clock, we go to our various homes.
The District Health Director, Doris Ahilegbe, confirmed the issue had come to her attention and explained measures she has put in place to ensure the anomaly is addressed.
It is true that we said they should submit some forms because of the validation of the payroll staffs nationwide. But I don't expect all of them to leave the facility early in the morning like this. Sometimes I just get up and do monitoring unaware, but we have schedule of monitoring that we do monthly. We visit all our facilities and we check some of their data, whether they are performing well or not.
The district director said she would have to report the midwife who keeps on reporting to work only twice in a week to the regional director after several warnings.
That's our wrap up with News at 10. Thank you very much for making time. Russia Daily is up next with the sports team. I'm Stephen Enti on behalf of the crew. Good night. There is more news at 3news.com.